What that one thing was depended on who told it. Some claimed he wanted her reputation. Others swore he wanted her dowry. The most romantic insisted he wanted her heart. Only Gabriel Thorne, Duke of Evermere, knew the truth. On a bitter February night, Ashbourne House blazed like a beacon on Brook Street, every window spilling golden light into the frost-hazed darkness. Inside, the Earl and Countess of Ashbourne hosted the most anticipated dinner of the early season, a glittering display of wealth and power that had half of Mayfair jostling for an invitation. Carriages lined the street in orderly rows, horses snorting steam into the cold air. Footmen in spotless livery helped ladies descend, skirts of silk and satin whispering over the stone steps as they hurried inside to escape the winter wind. In the large withdrawing room, beneath crystal chandeliers and a ceiling painted with cherubs, Lady Eleanor Ashbourne stood alone near the tall windows, watching the last streaks of daylight fade from the sky. The dying sun turned the bare branches of Grosvenor Square's trees into black ink strokes against a wash of pewter. Her reflection in the glass showed a young woman in the full bloom of her first official season, though she felt far older than her 21 years. Her dark hair had been coaxed into intricate curls threaded with pearls. Her gown, a deep blue silk that bordered daringly on indigo, made her pale skin seem almost luminous. Her eyes, clear grey, shot through with a hint of storm, studied herself with a cool, detached curiosity. She looked, she supposed, exactly as a proper Earl's daughter ought to look, and yet she felt anything but proper. Eleanor's gaze drifted lower, to the small silver brooch pinned at her waist. A stylized crow in flight, wings spread wide, its beak turned sharply downward. It was the Ashbourne crest, a symbol of her father's line for generations. Tonight, the weight of that tiny crow felt heavier than the entire house. "Eleanor, darling, do step away from that window. The draught will give you a chill, and I refuse to have you sniffling through dinner." Her mother's voice floated across the room, warm and gently chiding. Charlotte, Countess of Ashbourne, was everything the ton admired, graceful, composed, and exquisitely dressed in silver silk that gleamed like moonlight. She swept toward Eleanor, one hand already lifting to adjust a curl that had dared to slip free. "Yes, Mamma," Eleanor said, turning from the window. Her voice was soft, well-bred, obedient. It never betrayed the restless thrum beneath her ribs. Her mother's fingers brushed her temple. "You look lovely, dearest. Lord Weston will be very pleased." Lord Weston, Eleanor's betrothed. The name sat in her chest like a stone. "He is always pleased," Eleanor replied, summoning a practiced smile. "Mostly with himself and his hunting dogs." The Countess's lips twitched, a fleeting spark of humor she quickly smoothed away. "Do not be unkind. Weston is a viscount, young, respectable, and quite well off. Your father could have arranged a far less advantageous match." "I know," Eleanor said, because she did. She knew the ledger of her life had been tallied long before she was old enough to hold a quill. She knew she was fortunate. She knew she should be grateful. She did not know how to make herself feel it. Her father's voice carried from the doorway, rich and authoritative. "Charlotte, the first guests have arrived." "Ah, there you are, Eleanor." Edward Ashbourne, Earl of Ashbourne, cut an imposing figure even now in his late 50s. His once dark hair gone silver at the temples, his shoulders still soldier-straight from his years in uniform. The Ashbourne crow gleamed on his signet ring as he reached out and lightly tapped Eleanor's hand with his fingers. "Remember, tonight is important," he said quietly, for her ears alone. "The Westons are watching, and so is all of Mayfair. In a few weeks, your engagement will be formally announced. We must show them the future Viscountess Weston is as composed as she is beautiful." "Yes, father." The words slid out of her automatically, polished by a lifetime of expectation. He smiled, satisfied, and turned back to the door to greet the arriving families. Eleanor's stomach tightened. In a few weeks she would be formally promised. Within months, married. Her life would narrow to country estates, charity committees, and the production of an heir. No one had asked what she wanted from that life. No one had thought to. Her mother laid a gloved hand lightly on Eleanor's arm. "Smile, darling. You look as though you are going to your execution, rather than to dinner." "Some might argue the two are not entirely dissimilar," Eleanor murmured. Her mother's brows drew together. "Eleanor, forgive me." She smoothed her expression into something serene. She was good at that, at smoothing, at softening. at hiding the parts of herself that did not fit neatly into a viscount's future wife. In the hallway, the butler's deep voice announced, "His Grace, Gabriel Thorne, Duke of Evermere." The name sliced through the comfortable murmur of conversation like the first crack of thunder before a storm. Eleanor didn't see him at first. She only saw the reaction he caused. Heads turned. Whispered comments stirred the air like a breeze. "I did not realize Evermere had returned from the country. After what happened to his brother, I was certain he'd remain in exile. They say he hasn't attended a proper dinner in years." "Eleanor," her mother breathed, eyes bright. "This is quite the coup for your father." Eleanor followed her gaze toward the entrance to the withdrawing room, and then she saw him. The Duke of Evermere stood in the archway, the crowd unconsciously parting around him, as though he were some dark tide pushing into a sheltered bay. He wore black, simple, perfectly tailored black, that should have rendered him invisible beside men in embroidered waistcoats and bright cravats. Instead, it made everyone else look overdressed and unimportant. He was tall, shoulders broad beneath the cut of his coat, his posture carrying an unmistakable echo of military discipline. His hair, a shade of dark brown that was nearly black, was just long enough to curl at his collar. He had the kind of face that would have been called handsome only by someone with no imagination. To everyone else, it was something more dangerous. Hard angles, a strong jaw, a mouth set in a line that spoke of battles fought far from gilded ballrooms. But it was his eyes that struck Eleanor hardest. They were not merely dark, they were watchful, assessing. A predator's eyes in a room full of songbirds. For one heartbeat, his gaze swept past her, taking in the room with quick, efficient precision. Exits, clusters of conversation, who held court and who clung to the edges. It was the gaze of a man accustomed to calculating risks. Then those eyes landed on her. The impact was startling, as if someone had reached into her chest and squeezed. Eleanor went very still. It was not the look of a man idly noting a pretty girl by a window. It was far more deliberate, focused, as though in that instant he had judged her and found something useful. Heat climbed the back of her neck. She knew, suddenly and without reason, that whoever this man was when he was alone, he was not a man society understood, and he was certainly not a man who came to Ashbourne House by chance. "Your father did not mention inviting the Duke," Eleanor said under her breath. Her mother's fan flicked open, the guard of it brushing Eleanor's wrist. "He did not want to jinx it. Evermere rarely accepts invitations, but apparently—" Her eyes gleamed. "The Ashbourne Crow still holds some weight in London." The Ashbourne Crow. A shiver ran through Eleanor that had nothing to do with the draught near the window. Across the room, as her father stepped forward with outstretched hand and polished smile, Gabriel Thorne's gaze flicked briefly to the silver crest on the Earl's ring. His jaw tightened, just enough for Eleanor to see. If her father noticed, he gave no sign. "Evermere," he said, "Ashbourne House is honoured to receive you at last." "The honour is mine," the Duke replied. His voice was deep, roughened by something that had nothing to do with age. He inclined his head with formal politeness, but there was no warmth in the gesture, no easy camaraderie of two noblemen greeting each other as equal players in the same game. It felt, Eleanor thought, more like two men measuring each other before a duel. She couldn't possibly know that years ago, on a French battlefield far from London's glitter, Gabriel Thorne had received an official order sealed with wax bearing a small impression of a crow, the very same stylized bird that gleamed now from Ashbourne's hand. An order that had condemned his younger brother to die. He had never forgotten that seal, that crest, that crow. He had come to London for one reason. And as his gaze returned to Eleanor, the Earl's daughter, the jewel he flaunted before all of Mayfair, the young woman promised to another man, Gabriel Thorne realized that fate had just placed in front of him a weapon far sharper than any sword. The Earl's crow had taken his brother. He would take the Earl's beloved daughter, not by scandal, not by force, by something much more devastating, by making her choose him. The thought should have filled him with cold satisfaction. Instead, as Eleanor straightened beneath his gaze, grey eyes lifting to meet his with a calm that surprised him, Gabriel felt something he had not allowed himself in years, a flicker of curiosity. The murmur of conversation swelled as more guests were announced, but Eleanor felt oddly detached from it all. The room seemed to sharpen around a single point, the man who should not have been there, yet somehow commanded the space as if it were his by right. "Come, Eleanor," her father called, beckoning her and her mother closer. "It would be poor manners not to present my daughter to our distinguished guest." Poor manners were unacceptable in Ashbourne House, so Eleanor smoothed her skirt, lifted her chin, and crossed the room with measured steps, each one echoing softly against polished wood. Her heart had the indecency to beat faster, though outwardly she remained composed. The Duke of Evermere turned as they approached. Up close he was even more striking, and far more unsettling. There were faint lines at the corners of his eyes, not from laughter, but from squinting into harsh weather or smoke. A faint, pale scar traced the edge of his jaw, disappearing into the shadow of his collar. His gaze, when it settled on her, was not the flirtatious appraisal of a bored rake, nor the polite interest of a man searching for a suitable bride. It was assessment, not of her beauty, of her. "Eleanor," her father said, the Ashbourne crow glittering at his hand as he gestured, "may I present His Grace Gabriel Thorne, Duke of Evermere. Evermere, my eldest, Lady Eleanor Ashbourne." Eleanor dropped into a graceful curtsy, skirts sweeping around her like a pool of ink-blue water. "Your Grace," she murmured, keeping her eyes respectfully lowered a beat longer than strictly necessary, buying herself a moment to steady her breath. Lady Eleanor, her name on his tongue, sounded different. Less like a social label and more like something he weighed, considered, turned over in his mind. When she straightened, his gaze caught hers fully. For a moment, it was as though the rest of the room blurred. Those dark eyes did not slide away with false modesty. They held, measured, and beneath that cool scrutiny, Eleanor felt something inside her sharpen in response. An instinct that whispered, "This man is dangerous," but not in the way society meant when it gossiped about notorious libertines. This danger was quieter, older, tied to battlefields and buried grief and decisions no one in that pretty room could truly comprehend. "It is a pleasure to meet you, Your Grace," she said, her voice steady. "We are honored to have you at Ashbourne House." He inclined his head slightly. "The honor seems entirely mine." The words were polite. The tone was not quite. There was a subtle edge there, like a blade wrapped in velvet. Her father either did not notice or chose not to. "Evermere has only just returned to town," he said, with that particular pride men took in associating themselves with other powerful men. "I understand you have been much in the country since the wars ended." Evermere's jaw flexed once. "Yes. Evermere Hall requires attention. My tenants as well. And yet we managed to coax him from his fortress," Lord Ashbourne added, laughing lightly. "London is most grateful." "London is persistent," the Duke replied dryly. "And your invitation was difficult to refuse." Eleanor couldn't tell if that was a compliment or an accusation. The Ashbourne crow on her father's ring caught the candlelight again, a flash of silver in the corner of her eye. For the briefest moment, Gabriel Thorne's gaze flicked to it. Cold, sharp, controlled. Then it moved away, as if the crest were of no consequence at all. But Eleanor had not missed that flicker. Instinct coiled tighter in her gut. "Lady Eleanor," the Duke said, returning his attention to her, "do you enjoy hosting such grand evenings?" The question was simple, harmless on the surface, but his eyes told her he actually wanted to know. Eleanor's practiced answer hovered on her tongue. "Of course, Your Grace, it is always a delight to welcome our friends," but another answer, truer and far more dangerous, rose to meet it. "I find them." She hesitated, hearing her mother's silent warning in the stillness beside her. "Instructive." His brows lifted just a fraction. "Instructive. One learns a great deal about people," she said lightly, sliding the safer tone into place. "Who is eager to be seen, who prefers to watch, who speaks loudly, and who waits until everyone else is comfortable before saying something that actually matters." Her mother's fan stilled for a heartbeat, then resumed its gentle motion. The Duke's gaze sharpened. "And which am I, in your estimation?" An unwise question. An even more unwise thrill curled through her at being asked it. "You have been in the room less than 10 minutes, Eleanor said, the corners of her mouth threatening a smile she carefully contained. "It would be premature to form a conclusion, Your Grace." "Cautious," he said softly, "or diplomatic?" "A lady must be both," she replied. "And what must a duke be?" "Useful," Eleanor said before she could stop herself. Her father gave a quiet warning, "Eleanor." But Evermere's mouth actually curved, the faintest ghost of a real smile gone almost before it appeared. "A rare verdict in these circles," he murmured. "I shall endeavor to earn such a description." "Come, Evermere," Lord Ashbourne said. "We must not monopolize you. I am certain half the room is eager to hear your views on Bonaparte's latest exile and the state of the continent." "I doubt that," the Duke said. Most simply wished to be able to say they asked. Yet he allowed himself to be drawn away, swallowed by a group of gentlemen who immediately began vying for his attention. Eleanor exhaled slowly. Her mother's fingers tightened faintly around her arm. "What was that?" "What was what?" Eleanor asked, striving for innocence. "Do not dissemble. You were sparring with him." "We were conversing, Mama. He is not a man with whom one ought to prod," her mother said quietly. "There are stories." "There are always stories," Eleanor answered. "Especially about men like that. Men who returned from war with shadows in their eyes and ghosts at their heels. Men who had seen things that would crumble the pretty illusions of half the people in that room. Men who looked at the Ashbourne crow as if it meant something far beyond a family crest. Besides," Eleanor added, smoothing her skirts, "it is not as if the Duke of Evermere has any reason to pay particular attention to me." Her mother's gaze drifted across the room to where Evermere stood, listening to some gentleman speak about trade, while his eyes wandered lazily over the gathering. They came back to Eleanor. "On the contrary," the Countess said under her breath, "at this moment I believe he has every reason." Because he was looking at Eleanor again, not avidly, not hungrily, simply steadily, as if she were a chess piece he intended to move. Dinner was announced soon after, the butler's sonorous voice cutting through the hum of conversation. Couples began forming orderly streams toward the doors. Eleanor's betrothed, Viscount Weston, appeared at her side precisely when he ought to, prompt, polished, and dressed in impeccable taste. "Lady Eleanor," he said, bowing over her hand, "might I have the honor?" Weston was fashionably handsome, with fair hair, pale blue eyes, and a smile that never quite reached them. He was 28, held his liquor well and spoke fondly of his dogs and his estate's turnip yields. He had never once, in over a year of acquaintance, asked her what she wanted from her life. "You may," Eleanor replied, because that was what was expected. His arm was offered, she took it, and they joined the procession to the dining room. Ashbourne's dining room was a masterpiece of aristocratic self-importance. Towering ceilings, walls hung with portraits of stern men and elegant women, a table long enough to seat 30 easily, gleaming beneath crystal light. Tonight, it was set to impress. Silver polished to a mirror sheen, crystal sparkling. Arrangements of white winter roses marching down the center like armies. Eleanor's place card, written in her father's precise hand, sat between Viscount Weston and an elderly baroness known primarily for her opinions on everyone else's grandchildren. Directly across from Eleanor's seat was another place card, His Grace, the Duke of Evermere. Her pulse stumbled. Of course he would be placed opposite her. Her father would want the ton to see that the Duke of Evermere honored Ashbourne House, that he sat across from Ashbourne's most valuable asset, his eldest daughter, already promised to a viscount. It was a picture of power, wealth, and stability. At least, that was what it should have been. As Eleanor took her seat, she lifted her eyes and found Evermere already seated across from her, one arm resting lightly along the table's edge, his fingers near the stem of his wine glass. He was not watching the room. He was watching her. Weston settled beside her with a pleased little sigh. "Your father has truly outdone himself. I dare say no one will speak of anything else for days." Eleanor forced a smile. "Perhaps they will speak of the food and not the guests." Weston laughed, assuming she was joking. "Ah, but half the pleasure of dinners like this is the conversation afterward. Who sat where? Who said what? Who looked at whom? Human nature, my dear. We are all gossip at heart." "I suppose," she said, her gaze sliding back to Evermere. He was listening to Lord Ashbourne, who sat near the head of the table, speaking of trade agreements and parliamentary debates. But even as he responded with those low, measured answers, Eleanor felt his attention like a pressure on her skin, as if he were waiting. For what? She had no idea. Perhaps, she thought with a flicker of unease, for her to make some mistake he could use. Because the hook that would swirl through London's drawing rooms in the days to come had already begun to take shape, though no one knew it yet. Vengeful over a crow, the Duke targeted the Earl's promised daughter. He wanted only one thing, her. Not just her hand, not merely her reputation, her choice, Her father had once signed a piece of paper sealed with the Ashbourne crow that had cost Gabriel Thorne everything. Tonight, the Duke of Evermere began to calculate how he might return the favour, by making Lady Eleanor Ashbourne fall in love with him, and then forcing the Earl to watch as she chose the enemy over the future he had so carefully arranged. He lifted his wineglass, and beneath the table his hand clenched once hard. He had not come to London for pleasure. He had come for vengeance. Eleanor, unaware of the shape of his intent but very aware of the weight of his gaze, picked up her own glass with steady fingers. She had the strangest feeling that whatever life her parents had planned for her, country quiet, polite contentment, slow, respectable fading, had just shifted imperceptibly onto a different path, one that led straight toward the man across the table, and toward the one thing he wanted most. The first course arrived in a quiet parade of footmen, clear soup in delicate porcelain bowls, steam curling faintly in the candlelight. Conversation rose and fell in practiced waves, punctuated by the clink of glass and the muted chime of silver on china. Eleanor listened with half an ear as Viscount Weston launched into a detailed account of his latest improvements to his hunting lodge in Surrey. He spoke of kennels and drainage, of imported hounds and the proper curing of leather. It was all very sensible, very appropriate. It was also mind-numbingly dull. And if we expand the kennel yard another 20 feet, I believe the airflow will improve dramatically. The dogs will be far more comfortable, Weston concluded, sounding impressed with his own foresight. I am sure they will be eternally grateful, Eleanor murmured. What was that? I said it sounds very wise, she amended smoothly. You have thought of everything. Quite so, he said, pleased. A man must manage what he has been given, eh? Estates, hounds, wives. He laughed lightly as if he had made a harmless joke. Eleanor's smile did not shift, but something inside her cooled. Across the table, Evermere's gaze flicked toward her, as if he had heard every word. Of course he could not have. The room was too full, the distance too great. And yet, as the soup was cleared and the fish course laid down, the conversation at the head of the table shifted from Parliament to the continent. Lord Ashbourne, never one to waste an opportunity to show himself informed, addressed Evermere directly. Tell me, Evermere, he said, voice carrying easily, do you believe Europe is finally settled? Or do you expect Bonaparte will rise from St. Helena as he did from Elba? A ripple of interest passed along the table. Women leaned subtly forward, gentlemen rearranged themselves to appear attentive. War was a topic safely remote now, something to be discussed like a particularly thrilling novel. Gabriel Thorne set down his fork with deliberate care. I doubt Napoleon will rise again, he said. Men like him rarely receive two miracles in one lifetime. But settled? He paused, eyes moving from Lord Ashbourne to the assembled faces. Peace is only ever a pause between wars. We would be wise to remember that. How very grim, Your Grace, tittered the Baroness beside Eleanor. Surely you do not think we are in any real danger here in England? Danger has a way of ignoring oceans, he said, not unkindly. And complacency is a luxury earned by other men's blood. An uncomfortable silence fluttered around the table. Lord Ashbourne cleared his throat. You speak from experience, of course. Evermere's jaw shifted once, that almost imperceptible grind of teeth. I commanded men on the peninsula, he said. I have seen what happens when nations convince themselves that their safety is guaranteed, and their decisions have no cost. You must have many fascinating tales, cooed a lady further down, a marchioness known for both her jewels and her appetite for gossip. I always say there is nothing more thrilling than a good war story. Eleanor's fingers tightened around her knife. Across from her, Evermere's eyes cooled. Then you have never been close enough to hear one, my lady. Oh, come now, said a portly gentleman to Eleanor's left, already flushed with wine. Surely there are some tales you can share that are not too gruesome. You must have seen such glory, Your Grace, such heroic charges. The newspapers made it sound quite magnificent. There is nothing magnificent about watching a boy choke on his own blood, Evermere said very quietly. The words dropped like lead into the center of the table. Eleanor's breath caught. He continued, his tone level, as if reciting facts rather than memories. Or finding what remains of a village that stood in the wrong place when two armies crossed paths. Glory is a word used by those who have never scrubbed blood from their boots. The Baroness beside Eleanor made a faint, distressed sound. Really, Your Grace? This is hardly suitable for the ladies, another man protested. No, Eleanor heard herself say, before she could stop the words. Perhaps it is precisely what is suitable. Every eye near them swung to her. Her heart thudded against her ribs, but she did not look away from the Duke. We sit here, she said, voice steady, in silk and candlelight, discussing war as if it were a story at the theatre. Fascinating tales, magnificent charges. If it was ugly, if it was horror rather than heroism, then perhaps we ought to know that before we call it thrilling. Her mother went very still beside her. Weston stiffened at her right. Eleanor, he murmured, this is hardly— War is not an entertainment, my dear, the Baroness chided gently. It's not for delicate conversation. Eleanor looked at her. The men who died were not less real because we find it uncomfortable to think of them over soup. A hush fell over their corner of the table. Somewhere down the line, a fork clinked loudly against a plate. Then silence reclaimed the space. Across from her, Gabriel Thorne's gaze held hers, something dark and unreadable moving beneath the surface. The newspapers, Eleanor went on, her cheeks warming but her voice firm, made it sound like a series of games. Victories and defeats, lines moving on maps. If that is a lie, then perhaps we owe the truth at least the dignity of being named. Then finally she faltered, aware she had said too much. She straightened her knife needlessly, forcing her eyes down to her plate. The air around her felt heavy, thick with disapproval. It was Evermere who broke the silence. The newspapers lie, he said. The words were almost identical to what he had said in another house, on another night, to another woman whose life was already determined. But this time there was more in them, something rough-edged, almost grateful. They lie because it is easier to tell the public a story, he continued, his gaze shifting from Eleanor to the others, than to admit that war is chaos and failure, and the consequence of choices made by men who will never set foot on a battlefield. Really, Your Grace, Lord Ashbourne said sharply, you do our leaders a disservice. Do I? Evermere asked. His tone was mild, his eyes were not. For one moment, one small, unguarded moment, Eleanor saw it. The flicker of venom beneath the calm. Not random, not unfocused, directed. At men like her father. Men who sat in rooms very much like this one and sealed orders with signet rings bearing crows and lions and stags. Regardless, the Earl said, his smile tight, this is hardly the time or place for such severity. We are at dinner, not in the House of Lords. On that point, I agree entirely, the Duke replied. His gaze slid back to Eleanor, catching hers for a heartbeat before moving on. Forgive me. Old habits. The field is not, as Lady Eleanor rightly said, a suitable entertainment over fish. The Baroness dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. I shall have nightmares, no doubt. Then perhaps, Eleanor murmured, unable to help herself, they will be better earned than the ones we usually give ourselves. Weston's fingers tightened on the stem of his glass. You have always had rather independent notions, Lady Eleanor, he said, with what he clearly thought was indulgent amusement. But marriage will settle that, I am sure. The condescension in his voice slid along her spine like ice. Across the table, Evermere's eyes chilled. Independent thought is not an illness, Lord Weston, he said, his tone still courteous, but with a steel thread running through it. It requires no settling. Weston blinked. I did not suggest, yet you implied, the Duke said, eyes steady, that marriage should correct Lady Eleanor's mind. I confess, that is a view I find outdated. An almost imperceptible stir passed along the table. No one spoke to Weston like that, not in his own future father-in-law's house, not in front of half of Mayfair. Eleanor's pulse raced. I assure you, Your Grace, Weston said, flushing, my remark was merely in jest. I have the utmost respect for Lady Eleanor. As a decorative wife, Eleanor said lightly, before she could think better of it, who manages the household and smiles in the correct places. It is quite all right, my lord. I do not misunderstand you. His head jerked toward her, a front flashing across his features. Lady Eleanor. Enough, Lord Ashbourne said sharply. We will not quarrel in front of our guests. Eleanor bit the inside of her cheek, heat prickling at the back of her eyes. She had gone too far. Again, too honest, too sharp, too unwilling to perform the part assigned to her. She felt like a crow herself, trapped among doves. Across from her, Evermere lifted his glass, obscuring his mouth, but not before she saw it. The barest edge of a smile, not mocking, recognizing, approving. As the courses moved on, conversation slowly recovered, sliding back into safer topics. Fashion, weather, a recent scandal involving a viscount and a vicar's daughter that everyone pretended to disapprove of and secretly adored. But beneath the surface, something had shifted. Eleanor felt the weight of her father's glances, the tension in Weston's shoulders, the subtle withdrawal of some ladies who would later whisper that Lady Eleanor Ashbourne had shown an unfortunate tendency toward inappropriate earnestness, and she felt something else. Evermere's attention, quiet and relentless, brushing against her like a shadow every time she forgot herself enough to look up. When at last the final course was cleared and the ladies were summoned to the drawing room, Eleanor rose with the others, her chair scraping softly against the polished floor. Weston stood as well, bowing over her hand. "You were spirited this evening," he said, as if uncertain whether it was praise or censure. "I trust you will remember that a viscountess must be measured." "I shall do my best to remember what I must be," she replied. She was suddenly, acutely tired of being told. The ladies swept from the room in a swirl of silk and perfume, leaving the men to their port and cigars and important conversations. As Eleanor passed the head of the table, she felt it before she saw it, his gaze. She glanced up despite herself. Gabriel Thorne sat with one hand loosely around his wineglass, his dark hair a stark contrast against the white of his collar. Smoke from a nearby cigar curled upward, catching the light, winding like mist around him. He did not smile. He did not bow his head. He only watched her go. And for the first time that evening, Eleanor felt a flicker of something that was not merely unease or irritation or restless curiosity. It felt like standing on the edge of a high rooftop, looking down, knowing that if she stepped, nothing would ever be the same. Later, in the withdrawing room, as one of the younger ladies played the pianoforte with competent enthusiasm, whispers began to circulate. "Did you hear what she said at table? About war, of all things. Such seriousness does not suit a young lady, especially one on the brink of such a good match." Eleanor sat on a silk settee, her embroidery in her lap, the tiny needle motionless between her fingers. Her mother spoke quietly with a friend nearby, casting occasional glances her way. "Your performance was memorable," came a familiar voice at Eleanor's side. She looked up to find Lady Marianne Hargrove, her closest friend, settling beside her. Marianne's dark eyes sparkled with mischief and concern in equal measure. "I suppose you think I've ruined myself," Eleanor said under her breath. "Not at all," Marianne replied, lowering her voice. "I think you have simply reminded half the room that you possess a mind, a shocking development. They will recover." Weston did not seem thrilled. "Weston is thrilled only by drainage and dog breeding," Marianne said. "Perhaps he will propose to his own kennels and leave you free." Eleanor snorted softly, unable to help it. "There," Marianne murmured. "I have drawn blood." A laugh. "Now tell me truly, what did you make of him?" "Of whom?" "Do not be obtuse." "The Duke, Evermere. Half the ladies are either terrified of him or ready to swoon." Eleanor's gaze drifted to the door, as if she might see through walls to where the men sat with their port and secrets. "I do not know what to make of him," she admitted. "He feels like a storm someone has invited into a drawing room and then forgotten to be afraid of." "Poetic," Marianne said, "but accurate. He looked at you, you know. He looked at everyone." "Not like that," Marianne said, shaking her head. "When you spoke about the newspapers and lies and such, he looked at you as if you had thrown him a rope while he was drowning. It was quite intense." Eleanor's fingers tightened around her needle. "Then he has wretched taste in lifelines," she said lightly. "I was simply tired of hearing men speak of war as if it were a play." "Regardless," Marianne murmured, "he is interested." "In my opinions," Eleanor said. "A novelty in this house." "In you," Marianne corrected. "I do not yet know whether that is a blessing or a curse." Neither, Eleanor thought, did she, because while London would soon whisper that, vengeful over a crow, the Duke targeted the Earl's promised daughter. He wanted only one thing. Eleanor could not yet know that the one thing was not merely her heart, or her ruin, or even her hand. It was her choice between duty and desire, between a life mapped out in neat, respectable rows, and one carved through the wild unknown. And Gabriel Thorne, Duke of Evermere, had every intention of ensuring that when that choice came, Lady Eleanor Ashbourne would not be able to make it without thinking of him. In the withdrawing room, polite conversation fluttered around Eleanor like lace curtains caught in a draught. The pianoforte trilled somewhere near the hearth. Ladies murmured about ribbons, engagements, and the latest scandal involving a marquess who had been discovered in a conservatory with a widow and a bottle of Madeira. Eleanor pretended to focus on her embroidery, but her needle barely moved. Her thoughts were still at the dining table, still caught on the Duke's voice, low, razor-edged, too honest for a room gilded with pretense. Still caught on the way his eyes had found hers whenever she forgot herself enough to lift her gaze. Marianne nudged her gently. "You are miles away. I am right here." "You are not," Marianne said. "You have stabbed the same corner of that poor linen half a dozen times. It is beginning to look as though you have a vendetta against it." Eleanor lowered the hoop with a faint sigh. "I suppose I am unsettled." "By the Duke?" Eleanor hesitated. "By the evening." Marianne's eyes softened. "Your father will recover from the shock of you daring to speak in your own home. Weston will recover his composure, if not his pride. And the Baroness will likely tell the story tomorrow in a way that makes herself look heroic for having survived the tale." Eleanor huffed softly. "You know, the absurdity is that I did not say anything radical. I merely suggested that war should not be treated like a parlor game." "Ah," Marianne said, "but you forget. Sincerity is the greatest scandal of all." Eleanor looked at her friend's familiar, mischievous face and felt a wave of affection. "What would I do without you? Marry Weston," Marianne said grimly, "and slowly perish from boredom." Eleanor smiled, though it did not quite reach her eyes. The door to the drawing room opened then, and the men began filtering in. The scent of port and smoke drifted with them, warm, heavy, masculine. Weston entered first, smooth as ever, his smile aimed at her like a dutiful arrow. Eleanor braced herself, but Weston did not reach her immediately. Lord Ashbourne detained him, launching into conversation about some parliamentary matter. Relief loosened a single knot in her stomach. Evermere was among the last to enter. He stepped into the room as though leaving the dining table had changed nothing, still quiet, still controlled, still carrying that invisible gravity that bent the atmosphere around him. Eleanor forced herself not to look. She failed. His gaze found hers in the same moment her eyes darted to him, sharp as a drawn sword, steady as a mountain shadow. Her breath caught. He did not approach. He did not bow. He simply noted her presence, read the state of her nerves in a heartbeat, and moved on as though he understood exactly what she needed in that moment. Distance. It should have calmed her. It did not. Lord Ashbourne clapped his hands lightly, drawing attention to the center of the room. "My friends, thank you again for joining us this evening. My dear Charlotte has arranged a small entertainment for you all. Lady Eleanor has been prevailed upon to play." Eleanor froze. Her mother's hands folded primly in her lap, her expression serene and expectant. "Eleanor," she prompted gently. Marianne leaned close. "If you wish to faint, I will catch you." Eleanor shot her a look, but there was no escaping. A good daughter did not refuse such a request. A lady did not embarrass her parents. A future viscountess certainly did not hesitate over something as simple as a pianoforte. So she rose. Each step toward the instrument felt heavier than the last. The polished keys gleamed under the candlelight, familiar and yet suddenly foreign. She sat smoothing her gown beneath her and placed her fingers lightly on the keys. The room hushed. She began to play. A simple piece. Mozart, gentle and structured, one she had played countless times. Her hands moved automatically, but her mind was elsewhere, on her father's expectations, on Weston's condescension, on the gossip already forming in the corners of the room, and on the dark-eyed Duke standing near the doorway, arms loosely crossed, watching her with a focus that felt almost too intimate. As she reached the middle of the piece, her playing faltered for half a breath, not enough to be considered an error, but enough that Evermere's head lifted slightly, as if he had caught the shift in her pulse. She pressed on. The final notes drifted into silence. Polite applause followed, warm, restrained, exactly as expected. Eleanor rose and curtsied, then stepped away from the pianoforte, feeling oddly hollow. Weston approached her at once. "You play beautifully," he said, which would have been pleasant if he had not sounded like a man delivering praise to a well-trained lapdog. "Such accomplishments will suit you well in your role," Eleanor forced a smile. "My role?" "Of course," he said, oblivious to the stiffness in her tone. "Managing a household, entertaining guests, setting an example. You will excel, I'm sure." Before she could respond, another voice cut quietly between them. "Lady Eleanor." She turned. Evermere stood a few paces away, bowing his head slightly. A polite gesture, stiff, formal, entirely correct. Yet the way her breath caught was anything but. "Your Grace," she managed, "if you will forgive the interruption, I wish to say that your playing was uncommonly compelling." Weston smiled thinly. "Quite so. My fiancé is very accomplished." Evermere's eyes did not leave Eleanor's. "Not accomplished," he said, "expressive." Eleanor felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I merely did my best." "You did more than that," Evermere replied, voice low. "You played as though your thoughts were heavier than the notes." Her heart stumbled. Weston cleared his throat. "Indeed, women's minds are often occupied with trivialities, dresses, social duties and such." "Trivialities?" Evermere echoed softly, turning his gaze to Weston. "That is an interesting interpretation of what I heard." Weston blinked, caught off guard. "I only meant that ladies have many small concerns." "Small concerns," Evermere repeated, his tone turning cool. "It seems, Lord Weston, that you have not listened closely enough. Lady Eleanor's concerns are anything but small." Weston flushed. "Her Grace misinterprets." "I rarely misinterpret," the Duke said. A quiet, dangerous truth hung in the air. Before Weston could retort, Lady Ashbourne stepped forward gracefully. "Perhaps it is time for refreshments," she said brightly, diffusing the tension with practiced ease. "Eleanor, dear, would you assist me?" Eleanor nodded, grateful for an escape from the storm gathering between the two men. She followed her mother to the far end of the room, but before she stepped fully away, she felt it. That unmistakable weight. She glanced back. Evermere's gaze was on her again. Not possessive, not lascivious, strategic, watching the board, watching her, as though she were the single piece he intended to move, as though every word spoken tonight, every glance exchanged, every spark of understanding between them was another step in a game she did not yet know she was playing, and for the first time, Eleanor sensed, faintly but unmistakably, that whatever life she had expected to live, it was no longer waiting for her. Something else was. Something darker, sharper, more dangerous. Something that had begun the moment the Duke stepped into Ashbourne House. Something that would not be stopped now, because if London whispered vengeful over a crow, the Duke targeted the Earl's promised daughter. He wanted only one thing. Then tonight, in Ashbourne's withdrawing room, with her pulse still trembling from the keys of the pianoforte, Eleanor began to want something too, and that was the first crack in the cage her parents believed unbreakable. The evening wore on with polite elegance, but Eleanor felt none of it. Her thoughts churned beneath her composed exterior, circling the same points again and again. Weston's dismissiveness, her father's silent expectations, the weight of the Ashbourne crow, and the dark, unreadable gaze of the Duke of Evermere. She needed air, real air, not the perfumed, suffocating sweetness of the withdrawing room. So when her mother became occupied with the Countess of Rutherford, and Marianne slipped into conversation with two friends, Eleanor drifted quietly toward the far doors leading to the conservatory. It was a forbidden escape. Proper young ladies did not wander unaccompanied, but the pressure behind her ribs had grown so tight she feared she might crack. The moment she stepped inside the conservatory, the world shifted. Warmth wrapped around her, thick and humid, fragrant with night-blooming jasmine and soil. Moonlight filtered through the glass panes above, painting the room in silvery blue shadows. Palms and ferns created pockets of darkness, leaves whispering as though sharing secrets. Eleanor exhaled at last, a breath she had been holding since dinner began. She stepped deeper among the greenery, brushing her fingers along the velvety leaves of a camellia. The faint sounds of the withdrawing room muffled behind the door. For the first time that night she felt almost, "Lady Eleanor." She froze. The voice came from her left, low, smooth, and unmistakably familiar. Her hand dropped to her side, heart thundering. She turned slowly. Gabriel Thorne stood several paces away, half-shadowed beneath the arch of a towering palm. The moonlight carved sharp lines across his face, illuminating the cut of his cheekbones, the faint scar near his jaw, the unshakable steadiness in his eyes. He looked as though he belonged there, not amidst the jasmine and ferns, but in shadow, in quiet, in dangerous stillness. Eleanor swallowed. "Your Grace, I did not realize anyone else had stepped out." "I suspected you did not." His tone was polite, yet edged with something more observant. "Forgive me if I intrude." "You are not intruding," she said quickly, then wished she had sounded less eager. One dark brow lifted, though not unkindly. "May I join you?" Eleanor hesitated only a heartbeat before nodding. Evermere stepped forward, the soft sound of his boots against tile nearly swallowed by the rustle of leaves. He stopped beside her, a precise distance away, close enough to speak quietly, far enough to be respectable, and yet the air felt charged. "You seemed ill at ease in the withdrawing room," he said. She blinked. "Was it so obvious?" "To someone watching you," he replied. "Yes." Her pulse fluttered. She stared at a cluster of orchids rather than at him. "It has been a taxing evening. Your restraint at dinner was admirable. I do not believe my father or Lord Weston felt the same. I was not referring to their opinions." She dared a glance at him. His gaze held hers, steady, unreadable. "You spoke truth in a room that prefers illusion. That is never easy." She let out a short breath. "Truth has little place in society, Your Grace, especially when spoken by a woman. Then perhaps society has grown too accustomed to lying." The simplicity and certainty of the statement made something inside her shift. She looked away quickly, fingers brushing a fern leaf to occupy themselves. "I should not have spoken as I did. Weston believes it was unwise." "And do you?" Eleanor hesitated. Then softly, "No." Evermere's eyes warmed by barely a fraction, but she felt the change like a breeze. "Good." Silence fell between them. Not awkward, but dense, like the air before a storm. "I have the sense," Evermere said at last, his voice quieter, "that you are often expected to hold your tongue." "Yes," she admitted, "and that you dislike it." Eleanor's throat tightened. "I do." "Why endure it?" "Because duty required it. Because her father demanded it. Because her engagement depended on it. Because her entire future had been written without her consent, and saying so aloud would make her appear ungrateful, childish, unreasonable. Because she was a crow, locked in a gilded cage." She forced a small smile. "It is not my place to object." "That," Evermere said softly, "is a lie you have repeated so often you nearly believe it." Her breath stilled. He had struck too close, too easily. "You presume a great deal, Your Grace." "Yes," he said, "I do." His honesty disarmed her more than any courtesy might have. Eleanor folded her hands before her to steady them. "What brings you here? To the conservatory?" "Air," he said, "and quiet. And perhaps—" His gaze dipped to her lips for a single heartbeat, so fast she might have imagined it. "Company." Her pulse leapt. "I meant no impropriety by joining you," he added, though his tone suggested he was fully aware of how improper it was, and that he did not regret it. Eleanor had to look away again, or she feared she might forget herself entirely. The Duke shifted his stance slightly, turning toward a bed of lilies. "This house," he said, "wears its pride on its walls." Eleanor stiffened. "My father values our lineage." "I can see that," he said, nodding toward a carved crest mounted above the glass doors. The Ashbourne crow, wings spread in flight, glinted in the moonlight. "It is unmistakable." Eleanor frowned. "You dislike the symbol?" His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "I have known it in different contexts." "Different how?" Silence stretched. When he finally spoke, his voice was low. "Some symbols represent glory to one man and grief to another." The chill that ran through her had nothing to do with the temperature. "Your Grace." "It is of no consequence," he said abruptly, as though snapping a thread before it unraveled too far. "I should not have spoken." But she sensed the truth hovering behind his restraint. "Your brother served, did he not?" she asked quietly. Evermere went utterly still. For a moment she feared she had crossed a line. Then he exhaled, a slow, heavy breath that seemed to lift weight from somewhere deep inside him. He did. And he fell. "Yes." Eleanor's heart softened. "I am sorry." A muscle in his jaw ticked. "Most people say that. Few mean it." "I mean it," she said. His eyes shifted to hers, dark, searching, and unexpectedly vulnerable. "Then I thank you," he replied, genuine. Eleanor felt something inside her twist, pull, tighten. "Your Grace," she said gently, "you do not need to remain with me. If you wish to rejoin the gentleman—" "I do not," she swallowed. People may talk. Let them. You do not mind scandal. I mind lies, he said, and there is nothing false in this conversation. Her breath faltered. Silence wrapped around them, warm and heavy. The Duke stepped half a pace closer, not enough to touch, but enough that the air between them seemed to contract. Lady Eleanor, he said softly, I find that I do not wish to leave your side. Her heartbeat turned wild. You hardly know me. I know enough, he said, enough to recognize a woman who has been taught to silence her own mind. And what do you plan to do with that knowledge? She whispered. His eyes darkened. Use it. Eleanor's breath caught sharply. He continued, voice low, deliberate. Use it to see you clearly when others do not. Use it to hear you when others dismiss you. Use it to understand what you want, even when you have not yet spoken it aloud. Her lips parted in shock, in confusion, in something else entirely. How can you claim to know what I want? Because I see the fracture lines, he murmured. You hide them well, but not from me. Eleanor's pulse thundered so loudly she felt certain he could hear it. You should not speak so boldly, she whispered. No, he said, stepping back only slightly, giving her space she desperately needed. But I find I have little patience for pretending tonight. Before she could respond, the sound of voices drifted near the conservatory doors, laughter, footsteps, Weston's unmistakably pompous cadence. Eleanor stiffened. The Duke saw it instantly. I will leave first, he said. There can be no implication that you sought this. Her chest tightened. No one must see us. No, he agreed. He hesitated, just long enough for her to feel the weight of something unspoken. Then he bowed his head, voice low enough for only her to hear. This is not finished. Her breath stilled. Then he turned and vanished into the shadows between the palms, slipping out through a side door just moments before Weston's voice reached the threshold. Eleanor? Weston called. There you are. I was looking for you. She closed her eyes for one heartbeat. Then she turned, composed once more. Yes, my lord, she said, stepping forward to meet him. I was simply taking a moment of air. Weston smiled, satisfied with that explanation. Eleanor felt the echo of the Duke's last words reverberate beneath her ribs. This is not finished. And she knew instinctively and irrevocably that he was right. Nothing tonight was finished. Something had begun, something dangerous. Something that would soon sweep through her carefully ordered world and turn every expectation upside down. Because whatever vengeance the Duke sought, whatever wound the Ashbourne Crow represented, whatever fate awaited her engagement, tonight, in the moonlit conservatory, Eleanor had stepped into the first shadow of it, and she would not come out unchanged. Eleanor barely had time to breathe once the last guest departed. Her mother gave her a single sharp glance, the kind that communicated more than a lecture ever could. Eleanor, tomorrow you will apologize to Weston for your tone, the Countess said. My tone? Eleanor echoed. You embarrassed him, her mother replied calmly. And when a man is embarrassed, he reacts. Weston is proud, you know this. Eleanor did. She simply didn't care tonight. I spoke honestly, she said. That, her mother answered softly, is precisely the danger. Eleanor turned away before she said something she couldn't take back. Her entire body felt tight, with thoughts she wasn't supposed to think. She was halfway down the corridor when she felt it. Someone watching her. She turned. Evermere stood at the far end of the hall, hands clasped behind his back, posture unmistakably military even in evening dress. The candlelight carved shadows across his face, sharpening every line. He didn't move toward her. He simply said, low enough for only her, do not let them silence you. The words landed like a spark inside her. Before she could respond, he disappeared into the shadows and left her pulse racing. The next morning, Ashbourne House buzzed like a disturbed anthill. Weston had arrived early, too early. He waited in the drawing room, standing rigidly before the fireplace, jaw set with the practiced indignation of a man convinced he'd been wronged. Eleanor's father sat nearby, stern, controlled, prepared to scold his daughter the moment she stepped inside. Eleanor entered with steady steps. Lord Weston, she greeted. He bowed stiffly. Lady Eleanor, I trust you slept well. I did, thank you. Her father motioned for her to sit. She remained standing. Eleanor, Weston began, I hope you understand that last night was unfortunate. Your remarks drew unnecessary attention. My remarks? She repeated. Weston continued, oblivious. It is unbecoming for a future viscountess to challenge gentlemen in mixed company. "And if the gentlemen are wrong?" she asked. Weston stiffened. "That is not your concern." Eleanor felt the shift inside her, small, subtle, irreversible. She no longer wanted to be the girl who bowed her head. "Weston," she said quietly, "I did not embarrass you. I simply spoke. And you must learn not to," he snapped. Her father cleared his throat sharply, but Eleanor's gaze did not leave Weston. "Marriage," Weston continued, "requires harmony. You must not contradict me in public. People notice. And if I disagree with you in private?" "You won't," Weston said firmly. "Once we are wed, you will understand your place. Your duty is to support my opinions, not question them." The words hit her like a blow, not because they were surprising, but because she realized she had always known this would be her future with him. Silent, polite, decorative, caged. "Eleanor," her father said, voice edged with warning, "you owe Lord Weston an apology." Her heart thudded once, hard, painful. She inhaled, and for the first time she refused. "No." The room went deathly still. Her father's eyes widened. Weston stared as though she'd struck him. "Eleanor," her father said sharply, I will not apologize," she said, voice calm, "because I am not sorry." Weston stepped forward, voice straining. "You are to be my wife." "And what does that make me?" she asked. "Your equal or your possession?" Weston flinched. "Do not twist my words." "I don't need to," she answered. "You speak plainly enough." Her father slammed his hand on the arm of his chair. "Eleanor, enough!" She turned to him. "Father, I respect you, but I will not enter a marriage where I am expected to be silent." The door opened suddenly. All three turned. Evermere stood in the threshold. He didn't look at Weston. He didn't look at her father. His eyes went straight to Eleanor. Something flickered there, controlled, dark, unspoken. "I was told," he said with a cool bow, "that I might find Lord Ashbourne here. Forgive the interruption." Her father exhaled tightly. "Your Grace, we did not expect you this morning." Weston recovered quickly, straightening. "Your Grace, how may we assist?" Evermere's expression didn't shift. "My business is with Lord Ashbourne." But his gaze, brief, sharp, fell once more on Eleanor. A glance that said, "I heard everything." Her chest tightened. Her father stood. "Come, Your Grace, we will speak in my study." The two men exited, the door closing behind them. Weston turned on her instantly. "Eleanor, you will behave properly when I return. This childish rebellion ends now." He stormed after the others, leaving the door ajar behind him. Eleanor remained frozen in place. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with recognition. She wasn't a child. She wasn't confused. And she wasn't imagining anything. Evermere had come here with purpose, and if he had overheard the argument, or sensed her doubt, or understood that the engagement was far from secure, that made him dangerous. Not because she feared him, but because he was the first man who had ever told her not to silence herself, the first who saw the cage she lived in, the first who seemed willing to tear it open. She took a single steadying breath as the morning sun cut across the floor like a line drawn between her past and the life she had not dared imagine until now. Whatever the Duke wanted, whatever revenge he believed he was owed, whatever this dark magnetic pull between them was turning into, it was already too late to step back. Something had begun. Something that could no longer be undone. In Lord Ashbourne's study, the air was cooler, thinner, quieter. Books lined the walls in orderly rows. Ledgers and correspondence were stacked neatly on the massive mahogany desk. A fire burned low in the grate, more for form than warmth. Gabriel Thorne stood near the window, back straight, hands clasped behind him, waiting. Lord Ashbourne closed the door firmly and moved to the desk. "Well, Your Grace," he said, forcing a congenial tone, "it is an unexpected pleasure. To what do I owe this visit?" Gabriel didn't bother with preliminaries. "I came to speak of your daughter," he said. The Earl's brows rose. "Eleanor?" "Yes." A pause. "You are aware she is engaged to Weston?" "I am." "And yet you wish to speak of her?" "I do." Ashbourne's eyes cooled. "I will hope this conversation is more respectful than it sounds." Gabriel held his gaze. "I have no intention of being disrespectful, only honest." "Honesty," the Earl said dryly, "is a currency rarely used in Mayfair." "Then allow me the novelty," Gabriel replied. He stepped closer to the desk, his gaze flicking once, just once, to the silver seal resting near the inkwell. The Ashbourne crow, Wings spread, head lifted, a bird in the act of cawing, the same design that had pressed into red wax years ago on a letter delivered to a rain-soaked encampment in Spain, the same mark he had seen in his brother's hand when Thomas had shown it to him with a strained, wry smile. Orders to hold the line, Gabe. Signed and sealed. No retreat. Gabriel's jaw tightened. "Evermere?" his brother had said, laughing, even with mud slick on his boots and fear beneath his eyes. "Promise me if this goes poorly you won't spend the rest of your life blaming one man with a crow on his ring." He had broken that promise the day Thomas's body was carried back. "I understand there was some tension at your table last night," Gabriel said calmly. Lord Ashbourne's expression shuttered. "If you are referring to my daughter's unfortunate remarks, I assure you they will not be repeated." "That would be a waste," Gabriel said. "Excuse me?" "Silencing her would be a waste," he repeated. "She sees too clearly." Ashbourne frowned. "You presume a great deal about my daughter after a single evening, Your Grace." "2 evenings," Gabriel corrected. "I watched her at dinner, in the withdrawing room, in the conservatory." The Earl stiffened. "You were alone with her?" "Briefly," Gabriel said, unflinching. "We spoke, that is all." "That is more than enough," Ashbourne retorted. "Lady Eleanor is engaged. Her reputation is not a plaything." "Nor is her mind," Gabriel said. Silence settled between them, sharp as glass. Lord Ashbourne moved around the desk, one hand landing near the seal. "What is it you want, Evermere? Say it plainly." Gabriel's gaze dropped to the crow for a fraction of a second, then rose again. "I want permission," he said, "to call on your family, to see Lady Eleanor." The Earl stared. Then he laughed once, short and disbelieving. "You are serious?" "Entirely." "She is engaged," Ashbourne repeated. "Her future is determined." "Her future is promised," Gabriel said quietly. "There is a difference. That promise was made years ago. The match is advantageous and appropriate. Weston is a good man." "He is a man," Gabriel replied, "who expects a wife to be silent." Ashbourne's eyes narrowed. "You have no right to interfere." "Perhaps not," Gabriel said, "but I intend to nonetheless." The Earl's temper flared. "Do you imagine that because you went to war, because you carry scars and shadows, you can come into my house and disrupt arrangements tied to decades of family history?" "Yes," Gabriel said simply, "if those arrangements cage a woman who was not given a true choice." The Earl's hand closed into a fist on the desk. Gabriel took the final step closer, until the crow between them gleamed in both their lines of sight. "I have seen what comes of decisions made with quills and sigils," he said. "Men die far from home because someone in a London drawing room thought a line on a map looked better moved an inch west. You signed orders once, did you not, my lord?" Ashbourne blinked. "What?" "You sat in a room like this," Gabriel continued, voice low, "and you sealed papers with that crow. Papers that changed the course of men's lives." The Earl's mouth thinned. "I served in the War Office, yes, as did countless others. I signed what was placed before me. And one of those letters," Gabriel said, "sent my brother's regiment to hold a valley no army could hold. He died there." The color drained from Ashbourne's face. I do not recall." "You would not," Gabriel said. "To you, it was ink and wax. To me, it was a body I buried with my own hands." Silence filled the study like smoke. Ashbourne swallowed. "You believe I am responsible for his death?" "I believe," Gabriel said evenly, "that men like you have never truly paid the cost of the decisions you made. You signed orders, then went home to your dinners and your daughters. Men like my brother followed those orders and did not come home at all." The Earl stared at him, breathing hard. "Is this what you came for? To blame me?" "No," Gabriel said. "I came to collect a debt." "A debt?" "Yes." He glanced once more at the crow. "You took a son and a brother with the stroke of your pen. You will now watch as I offer your daughter something you never gave my family." "What?" Ashbourne whispered. "A choice." The word hung like a blade. Ashbourne straightened, outrage returning to his face. "You mean to ruin her?" "No," Gabriel said, and for the first time real heat entered his voice. "I mean to show her another path. Whether she takes it is up to her." "She is engaged," Ashbourne repeated stubbornly. "And she is unhappy," Gabriel replied. "You heard her this morning. You saw her last night. She is being pushed into a life that will suffocate her." "She will learn contentment," Ashbourne insisted. Gabriel's jaw flexed. "Contentment is not the same as living." The older man's shoulders sagged, just a fraction. He looked for a moment tired rather than furious. "You wish to punish me," he said quietly, "by tempting my daughter away from the future I have arranged for her." "Yes," Gabriel said, equally quiet. At first, Ashbourne repeated. Gabriel's gaze shifted to the window, where pale winter light spilled across the floorboards. "I came to London for revenge, Lord Ashbourne. To make you watch as the one piece on your board you value most refuses to move where you have placed her." Ashbourne's breath left him in a soft, stunned exhale. "But then," Gabriel continued, "I met her." He turned back, eyes steady, "and I discovered that what I want is no longer so simple as revenge." The Earl searched his face. "What do you want then?" Gabriel's answer was simple and far more dangerous. "I want the chance to court her, honestly, openly. I want to show her the life she could have as my wife, and then I want her to choose." "And if she chooses Weston?" Gabriel's throat tightened, but he did not look away. "Then I will walk away, and you will know that whatever she suffers in that marriage is not my doing, but yours." "You expect me to agree to this madness?" Ashbourne demanded. "I expect," Gabriel said, "that you care about your daughter, that somewhere beneath your pride and your crow and your ledgers, you would rather see her alive and blazing than dimmed and obedient." The words struck the older man hard. He looked at the seal again, at the bird that had once meant power, prestige, advancement. Now all he could see, perhaps, was a valley in Spain, where men had died under orders he had helped send. "If I refuse?" he asked. "I will still see her," Gabriel replied, "but it would be infinitely cleaner, for her, if I did not have to do so by subterfuge." Ashbourne let out a long, unsteady breath. "You ask me to risk her reputation, our standing, my alliance with Weston's family." "I am asking you," Gabriel said, "to give your daughter something you never gave the men whose lives you signed away." "What is that?" "A say in her own fate." Silence. At last, Lord Ashbourne sank into his chair, rubbing a hand over his face. "You will not rush her?" "No." "You will not compromise her?" Gabriel's jaw clenched. "No, I will not touch her unless she asks me to. And by the time she does, if she does, you will already have lost whatever control you believe you hold." It was a cruel humility, a warning wrapped in promise. Ashbourne stared at him for a long, long moment. "You are a dangerous man, Evermere." "Yes, and you will not give this up." "No." The Earl exhaled, shoulders finally dropping. "Very well, you may call. As a family friend." A muscle jumped in Gabriel's cheek. "Thank you. But understand me," Ashbourne added, steel returning to his tone. "If you hurt her, if this is all some elaborate game, then crow or no crow, I will see you ruined." Gabriel met his gaze. "I have no intention of hurting her. That is Weston's specialty should she marry him." Ashbourne flinched. "Go then," he said roughly, "before I change my mind." Gabriel inclined his head once and turned toward the door. His hand brushed the crow seal as he passed. The metal was cold. He smiled without mirth. Debt acknowledged. Game begun. Eleanor was in the upstairs gallery when she saw him leave the study. She hadn't meant to linger, hadn't meant to walk that slowly past her father's door, but her feet had taken her there all the same, drawn by a gravity she no longer tried to deny. She froze as the door opened. The Duke stepped out. He saw her immediately. No surprise flickered across his face, no guilt, only recognition. "How much did you hear?" he asked quietly. "Nothing," she said, which was almost true. "Only your voice. And yet, you are pale." "That is unrelated," she lied. His gaze softened briefly. "Is your father very angry with you?" "Yes," she said. "And no. And yes." A corner of his mouth lifted. "An impressive range. You seem remarkably calm for a man who has just faced his fury," she said. "I have faced worse," Gabriel replied, and she believed him. She hesitated then. "Why were you here, truly?" He held her gaze, and for a heartbeat she thought he might tell her everything. About the crow, about her father's orders, about a dead brother in a muddy valley. Instead, he said simply, "To ask permission." "For what?" "For this," he said. "To see you again." Her heart stuttered. "And did he grant it?" "Yes." Her throat went dry. "Then you intend to continue this acquaintance?" "I intend," he said quietly, "to give you something no one else seems inclined to offer." "What is that?" A choice. The word settled between them like a promise and a threat, because it meant one thing for him and everything for her. Vengeful over a crow, the Duke targeted the Earl's promised daughter. He wanted only one thing, her freedom, even if it destroyed them all. Ashbourne House received callers every weekday between 2 and 4 o'clock. It was a tedious ritual Eleanor had endured since childhood. Visiting ladies, obligatory gossip, dull conversation, shallow compliments. But on this particular afternoon, the drawing room felt different, charged, waiting. Eleanor tried and failed to focus on her embroidery as her mother entertained 2 neighbouring ladies. Her mind kept circling back to the morning, to Weston's anger, her father's warning, and the Duke's final words, "I intend to give you a choice." A dangerous promise. One she had not stopped thinking about. Lady Rutherford was in the middle of a long complaint about her daughter's new French governess when the butler appeared at the doorway. He cleared his throat. "Your ladyship, His Grace, the Duke of Evermere." The room froze, every head turned, and Gabriel Thorne stepped inside. He bowed politely to the ladies, his expression composed, his presence overwhelming the room without a word. He was dressed in dark riding clothes tailored perfectly, boots polished to mirror shine, his hair slightly wind-tossed as if he'd come directly from horseback to her door. Eleanor's pulse kicked. Her mother recovered first. "Your Grace," she said warmly, rising. "What an unexpected pleasure." "Lady Ashbourne," he bowed again. "Forgive the intrusion. I was riding nearby and took the liberty of calling." No one believed that. He was not a man who wandered without purpose. The neighbouring ladies were delighted and flustered at the same time, standing and curtsying with visible eagerness. Evermere acknowledged each, then turned to Eleanor. She stood slowly. He inclined his head. "Lady Eleanor." "Your Grace," she replied, careful, steady. His gaze held hers a fraction too long, a deliberate breach of propriety that no one could quite name as improper, just enough to unsettle her. Lady Rutherford nearly tripped over her own enthusiasm. "We were just discussing the season. Surely a man of your station has every intention of attending the hunt ball." "Perhaps," Evermere said politely, "though I find many events rather repetitive." "Oh," Lady Rutherford giggled, "but the young ladies look forward to it all year." Gabriel glanced at Eleanor, only once before answering. "Yes," he said softly, "some are worth looking forward to." Heat shot into Eleanor's cheeks. She looked away immediately. Her mother intervened, eyes bright. "Your Grace, may we offer tea?" "Only if Lady Eleanor will join me," he said. The room stilled again. The request was proper enough not to offend, but pointed enough that every woman present felt the shift. Her mother hesitated, calculating, weighing, then smiled. "Of course. Eleanor, do sit with His Grace." Eleanor obeyed, moving with calm she didn't feel. Gabriel took the seat across from her, his posture perfect, his attention unmistakably focused on her. A footman poured tea. Lady Rutherford and her friend attempted conversation, but their words dissolved into nervous chatter as they realized the Duke wasn't listening to them. Not really. His gaze kept returning to Eleanor, quietly, consistently, as if they were the only 2 people in the room. At last Lady Rutherford stood abruptly. "We mustn't overstay. I'm sure the Duke has private matters to discuss." They fled, leaving the room suddenly, startlingly empty, except for Eleanor, her mother, and Gabriel. Her mother rose gracefully. "I shall fetch fresh tea. Do excuse me." She left. The door closed. The silence grew thick. Eleanor sat perfectly straight, hands folded, breath shallow. "You came," she said at last. "I told you I would," Gabriel replied simply. "You should not have." "No," he agreed. "But I wanted to." Her heart stumbled. He leaned slightly forward, just enough to command her full attention. "I spoke with your father," he said. "He has given his permission for me to call." Eleanor's fingers tightened on her cup. "And Weston?" "Not informed." His voice held a faint edge. "I imagine he will not approve." "No," she murmured. "He will not." "Does that concern you?" She hesitated. Finally, "It should." "But does it?" She lifted her gaze to him. "No." Something flickered in his eyes. Approval, restraint, something heated and dangerous beneath the surface. "Eleanor," he said softly, using her name for the first time, "tell me honestly, do you want this engagement?" Her breath caught. She swallowed. I want peace. Peace, he echoed. Or freedom. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Is there a difference? Yes, he said. Peace is given. Freedom is taken. She felt the truth of it like a hand closing gently around her heart. He studied her face, reading every flicker of doubt, every hidden desire she could barely admit to herself. I would not push you, he said, but I will not pretend. I want you to see the life you could choose. You barely know me. I know enough, he said quietly, enough to recognize a brilliant mind trapped behind expectation, enough to see you deserve more than silence. Eleanor's breath trembled. Gabriel, your grace, this is dangerous. Everything worth choosing is, he said. The door opened suddenly. Eleanor jolted. Her mother returned with the tea tray, smiling politely, unaware of the storm hovering in the room. Your grace, she said lightly, I trust my daughter hasn't bored you. Gabriel's gaze held Eleanor's for a single steady second before he answered. On the contrary, he said, I find Lady Eleanor impossible to forget. Her breath vanished. Her mother beamed in delighted ignorance. The Duke rose smoothly. I will not overstay. Thank you for receiving me. Eleanor stood as he bowed to her mother, then to her, lower than necessary, slower than propriety allowed. She felt the promise in it. He stepped back. Good day, Lady Eleanor. Good day, Your Grace, she managed. He left the drawing room. Her pulse hammered so loudly she barely heard her mother sigh happily. My dear, the Countess said, it seems Evermere has taken quite an interest in you. Eleanor stared at the door where he had stood a moment before. Interest was far too simple a word. This was a collision, a dismantling, a beginning she had no power to stop. The Duke wanted only one thing, and he was coming for it. Weston chegou a Ashbourne House antes mesmo do relógio marcar 3. Ele não aguardou ser anunciado. Não perguntou se Elinor estava ocupada. Entrou como um homem já convencido de seu direito. Elinor estava na biblioteca, lendo perto da janela, quando a porta se abriu abruptamente. Why was Evermere here yesterday? A voz dura, sem saudação, sem cortesia. Elinor fechou o livro lentamente. Good afternoon to you too, my lord. Do not play games with me, Weston said, stepping forward. I heard he visited. Alone. With you. He was not alone. My mother was present, she replied. That does not answer my question. Eleanor kept her posture still, calm. He paid a polite call. Nothing improper. Weston's jaw twitched. Evermere does not make polite calls. He is a soldier, not a society peacock. If he was here, he meant something by it. Perhaps, Eleanor said. He simply wished to be courteous. Weston let out a harsh laugh. Courteous? That man has killed more Frenchmen than I have letters in my name. He does nothing without reason. A beat of silence. His eyes narrowed. Did he speak to you? Yes. About what? My playing, my thoughts, the evening. Weston went rigid. Your thoughts? That is not his place. Eleanor lifted her chin. My thoughts belong to me. His expression darkened instantly. You belong to me. She inhaled sharply. I am not your wife yet. You are promised, he snapped. That is enough. No, she said quietly. It is not. Weston stared at her, stunned by the firmness in her voice. This behavior, he said slowly, this defiance, it began last night, after he arrived. Or, she said, it began because I am tired of being spoken to as though I am a piece of furniture. Eleanor, he stepped closer, too close. I will overlook this moment, but you must understand. Evermere is not a man to trust. He is damaged. He is unpredictable. He lost his brother. He lost half his regiment. He also listens, she interrupted. Weston blinked as if struck. He listens when I speak, she continued, calm but firm. Something you rarely do without correcting me. His voice lowered dangerously. Has he turned your mind against me? No, she said. You did that yourself. Weston's nostrils flared. Your father will put an end to this. He tried, Eleanor said. Despite that, Evermere has permission to call. Weston's face drained of colour. Your father allowed it? Yes? And you encouraged it? Her silence was answer enough. Weston's composure cracked, just slightly, and she saw it, the insecurity beneath the arrogance. You cannot be serious, he whispered. Eleanor, this match has been arranged since you were 12. I know. I have waited for you, he breathed, prepared my home for you. My life. I never asked you to. The truth landed like a blow. Weston straightened abruptly, shoulders stiff. You are confused, affected by a stranger's attention, but this nonsense will pass. Evermere will tire, and when he does, you will regret this display. He moved toward the door, pausing only once. I will speak with your father, he said. This ends now. The door slammed behind him. Eleanor sank into the nearest chair, pressing a trembling hand to her chest. She had defied Weston before, quietly, subtly, but never like this. Never with truth so sharp it cut both directions, and yet she felt lighter. For the first time in years, Weston did not go home. He went directly to White's, the gentleman's club, where reputations were made and destroyed with a single careless remark. He stalked into the main room, scanning for the Duke. Evermere was there, alone, reading correspondence by the window, relaxed, composed, entirely unmoved by the chaos he'd left behind him. Weston approached, bristling. Evermere. Gabriel lifted his gaze slowly. Lord Weston, I believe you owe me an explanation. For what? The Duke asked, tone neutral. You visited Lady Eleanor. Yes. You sought her out. Yes. You had no right. Gabriel folded the letter with military precision. I had permission. From her father, Weston spat. From her, Gabriel corrected. Weston stiffened. You are attempting to influence her. Gabriel's expression did not change. I am giving her room to think. What she does with that room is her choice. She is engaged. Promised, Gabriel corrected again. A promise can be broken. A marriage cannot. Weston leaned closer, lowering his voice. You do not know her. You do not know anything about her life. On the contrary, Gabriel said, I know that she is unhappy. That is not your concern. It is now. Weston's hands balled into fists. If you think I will step aside, I do not expect you to, Gabriel said calmly. I expect her to decide. Weston stared at him, stunned. You're mad. No, Gabriel said. I am resolved. Weston trembled with fury. I will marry her. I will not lose her to a man like you. Gabriel stood slowly, towering over him, not in insult, but in quiet dominance. You will lose her, he said, if she wishes to be lost. A final blow, delivered softly, precisely. Weston stared at him, breathing hard, then turned sharply and stormed out of the club. The moment he disappeared, Gabriel allowed himself a slow exhale. He had faced French cavalry with steadier nerves, but this creeping certainty that Eleanor Ashbourne was beginning to awaken, this frightened him more than war, not because of what he might do, but because of what he might want. That evening Eleanor stood at her window, staring at the darkening gardens below. She knew Weston was angry. She knew her parents were anxious. She knew London would soon whisper. And yet, she touched the glass gently, thinking of the Duke's voice, steady and measured. I want to give you a choice. No one had ever said that to her. Not once in her entire life. Something new took root inside her chest. Not love, not yet. Not even desire, though it simmered beneath the surface. Something far more dangerous, possibility. The next morning, Eleanor came down to breakfast, expecting silence and disapproving stares. Instead, she found her parents in a tense, half-whispered discussion that stopped the moment she entered. Her mother offered a careful smile. Her father did not. Eleanor, Lord Ashbourne said, setting down his cup with controlled force, Weston sought me out yesterday. She sat, keeping her chin high. I imagine he was displeased. Displeased is mild. He believes you are being influenced. Manipulated. I am not. He claims Evermere is competing for your attention. Eleanor kept her eyes on her empty plate. Perhaps I'm simply tired of giving attention to someone who does not deserve it. Her mother let out a quiet, strangled breath. Her father stiffened. Eleanor, Weston is your fiancé. What you said to him yesterday was reckless. It was honest. Honesty has a proper time and place. She looked him directly in the eyes. And when is my time? Her father opened his mouth, then closed it again, for the first time at a loss. Her mother intervened gently. Eleanor, dear, perhaps you need distraction. Visit Marianne this afternoon. Clear your mind. Eleanor heard the subtext clearly. Do not be home if Evermere returns. But she only inclined her head. Yes, mother. That afternoon, Eleanor visited Marianne. a wise decision for all of 20 minutes. Because Evermere arrived there as well, Marianne saw the enormous black horse first, trotting down the street with military elegance. Then the Duke himself, controlled, immaculate, and fully aware of the effect he created. Marianne gave a slow smile. "He came for you." "No," Eleanor said, colouring. "He didn't know I was here." "He knew." Marianne raised a brow. "Men like him always know." Moments later the maid entered. "His Grace the Duke of Evermere asks if the ladies would receive him." Eleanor closed her eyes. "Oh, heavens!" "Open them," Marianne whispered, amused. "This is about to become far more entertaining." The Duke entered the sitting room with the same calm as a general entering a war tent, reading everything, controlling everything, planning everything. "Lady Marianne," he greeted, "thank you for receiving me." "Always welcome, Your Grace," Marianne curtsied. "I'll give you 2 privacy." And she left. Eleanor remained standing, feeling like she was on the brink of a mistake she very much wanted to make. Gabriel approached, keeping proper distance, but not comfortable distance. "Lady Eleanor," he said, "you look unsettled." She let out a sigh she couldn't hide. "My father is angry. Weston is furious. My mother is trying not to panic. I believe that summarizes everything." "Because of me," Gabriel said, voice controlled. "Partly," he nodded once. "Then I will not apologize." Eleanor blinked. "You should." "Should I?" His eyes held hers. "Or do you want me to continue?" Her heart jumped. "I don't know." "Then allow me to ask another way. One step. Just one. Do you want me to stop calling on you?" She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. The words came slowly. "No." Gabriel inhaled deeply, and something subtle shifted in him. A tension released, a decision confirmed. "Then," he said softly, "I will continue." She looked away. "My father will not approve again." "He already has," Gabriel replied, "and he will not revoke it. Not after our conversation." Eleanor frowned. "What conversation?" "The kind that earns a man's respect," he said, making it clear he would say no more. She exhaled. "This is reckless. Yes. It is inappropriate. Yes. It is dangerous. Especially for me," Gabriel said. "Yet here I am." Eleanor looked up, meeting his gaze. "Why?" The answer came without hesitation, without embellishment. "Because you deserve a life that belongs to you." A shiver ran down her spine. "You barely know me." He stepped closer, still respectable, still proper, but his voice dropped. "I know enough." Eleanor remained very still. "And what do you intend, Your Grace?" "Nothing you do not choose," he said, "and everything you do." The impact of that sentence broke through every line of defense she had. For the first time she sensed he wasn't trying to win her, he was trying to free her, and that was infinitely more dangerous. On her way home the carriage rocked gently across the road, but Eleanor's mind was at war. Weston wanted possession, her father wanted obedience, society wanted silence, and Evermere wanted her to decide. Some men seduce with sweet words, some with promises, some with power. Gabriel Thorne seduced with freedom, and that made her the most vulnerable woman in London. When she returned to Ashbourne House, the first person she saw wasn't her mother. It was Weston standing in the foyer like a judge awaiting a verdict. "Where were you?" he demanded. Eleanor answered with the truth he never expected. "Somewhere you cannot follow." Weston went pale. Before he could reply, the butler announced, "His Grace, the Duke of Evermere." Eleanor turned. Weston froze. The blood drained from his face. Evermere entered. And for the first time, the two men faced each other not as social rivals, but as two forces on opposite sides of the same battlefield. Gabriel said calmly, "I believe Lady Eleanor and I have unfinished business." And Weston finally understood. He was already losing her. The foyer fell silent. Eleanor stood between Weston and the Duke of Evermere, feeling the air tighten. "Your Grace," Weston said coldly, "you arrive at an inconvenient time." "I rarely concern myself with convenience," Gabriel replied. Weston stepped too close to Eleanor, a possessive gesture. "I was speaking with Lady Eleanor." "And now I am," the Duke said. Eleanor tried to calm things, but Weston cut across her. "This ends now. You are meddling where you don't belong." "Lady Eleanor concerns me," Gabriel answered. "You dare say that in her father's house?" Weston demanded. "I dare say it anywhere." Weston's face flushed. You are trying to destroy my engagement. It is already unsettled, Gabriel said. I'm only making it clear she deserves more than a man who thinks he owns her. Weston moved toward him, but Eleanor stepped in. Stop, both of you. Eleanor, he is manipulating you, Weston said. No, he is listening to me. The Duke stayed silent, letting her speak. I will not be spoken of as if my thoughts belong to someone else, she said. If you had any honor, you would leave her alone, Weston snapped at Gabriel. The Duke's answer was calm. I have enough honor to offer her what no one else has. And what is that? A choice. Weston turned to Eleanor. Is that what you want? Him? She hesitated, then said, I want my life to be mine. At that moment, Lord Ashbourne appeared on the stairs. He ordered Weston into his study. As Weston passed Eleanor, he murmured, This isn't over. When the door closed, Eleanor's hands shook. You handled him well, Gabriel said quietly. I didn't want to hurt him. You didn't. You stopped pretending. I shouldn't be speaking with you here, she whispered. Probably not. People will say I'm pursuing you, he replied, and that you're letting me. Do you regret any of this? She asked. No. Do you? No. He turned to go, then paused at the door. If you ever decide you want a different life, you know where to find me. For the first time, Eleanor felt not out of control, but in control. After nearly an hour, Weston left the study, pale but composed. Your father is considering alternatives, he said. To our engagement, he thinks you need time. Time, not obedience. I believe you will remember your duty, Weston added. She understood. He still did not see her. Her father soon called her to walk. Eleanor, you have placed this family in a hard position, he said. Weston is a respectable match. I know, but understanding and wanting are not the same. You have always been dutiful. Perhaps too dutiful, she answered. Duty becomes a flaw when it costs a person their voice. Has Evermere been filling your head with this? He asked. No, I've been thinking for myself. She stepped closer. I cannot marry a man who does not truly see me. Her father studied her, then sighed. Your engagement is paused, temporarily. She breathed again. Thank you. Do not thank me. I still do not trust Evermere. He is dangerous. I know, she said, and I'm not afraid of him. When she left the room, Gabriel was already waiting at the end of the hall, hands clasped behind his back. Your father has paused the engagement, he said. Yes. People will blame me, he warned. They will say I tempted you away from duty. Is that what you've done? No. I told you the truth. And what truth is that? He stepped closer. That you deserve more than obedience. You deserve to live. He gently set a loose strand of hair back into place. I will not push you, he said. But I will not step back. What do you want from me? A chance. And if giving you that chance ruins me, then I'll spend the rest of my life rebuilding you. And if I ruin you, he gave a faint, dark smile. You already are. When you're ready, he said, stepping away, send word. By morning, London was whispering. Marianne rushed in. They're talking about you and Evermere. His horse at your door. Weston looking gutted. Evermere defending your name. I did nothing improper, Eleanor whispered. That doesn't matter, Marianne said. What matters is what people want to believe. Her mother appeared in the doorway. We are on the edge of a scandal, the Countess said. You will stay inside. No calls, no visits. You will not see Evermere again. My future is changing, Eleanor said. It must not, her mother replied. If not for yourself, then for the family. I will not live as an ornament. Then you will suffer, the Countess said softly. A knock interrupted them. The butler announced, His Grace the Duke of Evermere requests an audience. He says he will wait outside in the cold until Lady Eleanor agrees to see him. Her mother went pale. Send him away. But Eleanor was already running. She flung the front door open. Winter wind cut through her gown. Gabriel stood at the bottom of the steps, coat open, eyes fixed on her. You shouldn't be here, she said. I disagree. People are talking. You're feeding the rumors. I'm correcting them, he replied. I won't let London tear your name apart because you spoke to me, because you dared to want something different. And what are you offering me? She asked. A way out. If you want me to walk away, say it now, he added. She couldn't. Then I won't leave. My reputation, my family, my father, Weston. I will protect your name. I will not disgrace your family. I've faced worse men than your father. And Weston," his voice dropped, "will lose." "Come inside," she whispered. "No, not until you open that door because you want me there, not because you're afraid. I will not be another cage." She stepped down until only one stair separated them. "Then wait for me." "Always," he said. For the first time she knew she was choosing her life, her freedom, and him. Inside, her mother begged her to stop, warning of Weston's anger. Before Eleanor could answer, Weston himself arrived. He spoke smoothly at first, then dropped the mask when she refused to reassure him. "You are promised to me," he said. "I was assigned to you," she answered. His voice turned venomous. "Evermere doesn't care for you. He wants revenge. Because of a crow. You are a weapon." "That is not true," she said, but doubt flickered. "End this," Weston ordered. "You will send word that his visits are no longer welcome." "No." "Yes. You will obey." "I will marry a man I choose," Eleanor said. "Or I will marry no one." Weston's face twisted with rage. "You will regret humiliating me." "Step away from her." Gabriel stood in the doorway, eyes blazing. "You have made this my concern," the Duke said, crossing the room. "You will not treat her as property. You will not raise your hand to her." Weston lunged, but Gabriel caught his wrist in midair. "Leave," Gabriel said quietly. "This is over." Weston tore free, spat threats, and stormed out. Eleanor shook. Gabriel's voice softened. "Are you hurt?" "No." "You're trembling." "So are you." She confessed what Weston had said, that she was just a tool in a revenge game. Gabriel's composure finally cracked. "I came because I could not stay away," he said. "Because of you, not him." "I want you," he said, voice raw. "Not as a pawn. As the only woman who has ever truly seen me. Tell me I haven't already lost you." "You haven't," she whispered. Lord Ashbourne entered then, and the truth finally surfaced. This was about the Ashbourne crest, the crow, stamped on an order that had led to Gabriel's brother's death in the war. "I spent years looking for someone to blame," Gabriel said. "I found your seal. I came to hurt you. At the beginning, I meant to use your daughter as your punishment." Eleanor's heart broke at the admission. "But she was not what I expected," he continued. "I came for vengeance. Then I met her, and vengeance began to look small." He turned to Eleanor. "I never lied to you. I let you assume I had no history with your father. But every word about your freedom, your worth, that was the truth. Then, to the Earl, I planned to tear your life apart. Now I only know that I love your daughter, not as revenge, as grace." Her father looked at Eleanor. "Knowing all this, what do you want?" "I want to stop living as if my life is an apology," she said. "I want to be more than a contract. And I want him, because he sees me." The Earl admitted Weston had already sent word. The engagement was finished. Scandal would fall on them, not on Weston. He turned to Gabriel. "Are you man enough to stand beside her when the whispers start?" "I have stood on fields of the dead," Gabriel answered. "I can stand with her in a drawing room." Her father finally said, "If this is truly your choice, Eleanor, I will not stand in your way." "I accept," he told Gabriel, offering his hand. "Do not prove me wrong." "I will spend my life trying not to," the Duke replied. Her mother, tearful, cupped Eleanor's face. "You are doing what I never dared. I am terrified and proud." The scandal came quickly. Whispers, stares, broken invitations. But soon, printed announcements followed. The end of Lady Eleanor's engagement to Lord Weston, and then the forthcoming marriage of Gabriel Thorne, Duke of Evermere, to Lady Eleanor Ashbourne. They married quietly at Evermere's estate, far from London. Eleanor wore a simple ivory gown, a silver crow at her throat, her father's gift and apology. At the altar, Gabriel whispered, "I came to your family for vengeance. Today, I leave with a life." She answered, "I was raised as a duty. Today, I leave with a choice." Their vows were equal, honest, chosen. He kissed her not as a conqueror, but as a man finally allowed to rest. Years later, crows still circled the high walls of Evermere. They no longer meant death. Watching their children play, Gabriel said quietly, "The seal means something different now. A man marked by war can choose peace. A woman raised for duty can choose herself." "And vengeance?" Eleanor asked. "Was never what I truly wanted," he replied. I wanted you, I just didn't know it. Their son ran up with a carved wooden crow. Papa says it's lucky now. Eleanor smiled. Some things begin in anger, but they don't have to end there. That night, as crows called in the dark, Gabriel held Eleanor close. A crest that once meant loss brought me to you, he said. We saved each other, she answered, because we chose to. A duke who came for revenge and stayed for love.